Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Here I Am podcast. I am your humble host, Andre, also known as a dork who lives on TikTok and Instagram. And here I have the lovely Jenna, who you can also follow on TikTok. Again, I said TikTok. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. This is the third time we're trying to record this, and I said TikTok every single time. Um, her her TikTok handle is OG underscore underscore JG, or you can also follow her on Instagram at the Jenna Grace. Hi, Jenna. How's it
Hi,
going?
I'm
Third
okay.
time.
Third time.
Um, I'm very, it's the Here I Am podcast. I don't like to edit or anything like that. So I said we had some technical difficulties before earlier. And one, we're gonna jump back into this conversation. We are gonna jump into this conversation, but I think you all should hear the backstory to what had happened. We were talking about religion and the church, and then lightning struck, like, and just knocked her completely, knocked, like, turned her computer right off. And I was like, all right, sounds like we're doing the right thing here.
God is smiting me.
Very much so. So for those of you who don't know, Jenna is a therapist, and Jenna, why don't you? And she's working on her PhD currently. But she's also currently working as a therapist. And Jenna, why don't you tell the people how we got into this conversation of religion before, and what is it you're specializing in specifically?
Yeah, so I'm an inpatient and outpatient therapist, which means I work on a psych ward and I also do one-on-one outpatient counseling. I'm specializing in trauma, but I specifically specialize in religious trauma. So people who've been raised within the church experience some kind of abuse, manipulation. They'll come to me and we'll kind of work through that. I think we're seeing like an influx of that, especially in our generation of millennials, where we have been going through this deconstruction phase. I personally decided to go through it. I've been sexually assaulted. I don't know if you need to put a trigger warning on this, but I've been assaulted a couple times, actually, unfortunately, by people within the church. And I started to notice like a direct line from purity culture to rape culture, as well as, I mean, like you can go into like brainwashing and see how the church has done that, or just people not knowing and not knowing what they're doing. And there's this just confusion between people who really like honestly want to help others and like honestly care for other people, but because they're not equipped or knowledgeable about mental illness, about anxiety, about depression, about schizophrenia, they end up being really harmful towards the patrons of their church and end up either pushing them either further into depression or further into anxiety. And so that's kind of my specialization is trauma, but specifically I do religious trauma.
Yeah, I know that it's like it can be really difficult because and I've definitely like experienced this. I am a Christian, but I'm really nowhere near involved with the church anymore, um, due to several different factors that we can get into. But one being like a lot of times it would be like, oh, I'm really depressed. Well, just put it in God's hands.
Mm-hmm.
Just pray. That's it. And while there is, I believe there is a power in prayer specifically, it's, you know, it's also that kind of thing where it's like, God also gives you people to help you with these issues. Like there's a joke where there's a man in a flood and he's sitting on his roof wanting to be rescued, and a guy in a helicopter comes and goes like, "Hey man, come with us, we'll save you." He's like, "No, I got it, God's gonna save me." And then a guy in a boat comes by and he's like, "Hey, hop in the boat, we'll get you out of here." And he's like, "No, no, I'm not gonna do it, God's gonna save me." And then he ended up dying, and he goes up to heaven, and he goes to God, "God, why didn't you save me?" He's like, "Dude, I sent a helicopter and a boat. Like, what the heck?" It's like sometimes it's just like, it's like expecting like this like grand gesture with it. And like I think some of my own issues now is like it's, I think people judge too much based on, Christianity a lot. I think like there's a lot of judgment of like other people, and
Mhm.
like I feel like a lot of people forget like that's not our place. Um, and we are supposed to like love and care about one another. But I know for me, like, I really stopped going to church after my mom died because the church that I went to, which I love, don't get, I love the pastor. He gave really great sermons, and I've had times where I remember that like I went back to church before like after my dad died, before my mom got sick, where I was like I felt lost, and I just went to church, and it was like the sermon. I was like, wow, that was exactly what I needed to hear.
Mhm.
And then boom, that was exactly what I needed to hear. But then like after my mom died, my mom was like super involved in that church. And so every time I went, it just brought up like so many memories, and it just hurt. And then I tried going to other churches, and I grew up Lutheran, right? And which I call what I like to call the Coke Zero of Catholicism. Like it's like the same taste without the guilt. Um, and it's like and so like I was used to hymns and all that stuff, and I was never a really big fan of hymns or Christian music in general. Now, don't get me wrong, if you love Christian music, if that's like if whoever's listening to this, if you love Christian music and it brings you closer to God, I love that for you. Do it. Yeah, I just never could connect to it that way. And then a lot of modern Christian churches now, it just feels like it's a concert with a sermon thrown in. And like I'm just not a fan of it. And
Yeah.
it felt really, I don't know, it just feels wrong. And so like while I am a Christian, I've really taken my own faith to being my own personal relationship with
Relationship.
God. Yeah, it's my
Yeah.
own relationship with God. Has God pissed me off? Yeah, both my parents are dead, and they got taken away from me very young.
Yeah.
Have I seen the impact that it's made on other people when I tell them my story and I share myself like that with them? Yeah, and that's God playing his hand and role into that. And, I'm very grateful for the things that I have been given, and I try not to dwell on how hard my life has and can be.
Mhm.
Um, because I always have that like feeling like whatever he gives me, he's going to give me a way out, which is like essentially, I never remember, and this is really weird that I'm like gonna not quote scripture, but like bring it up, like First Corinthians 10:13.
Yeah.
Meaning of the passage is essentially God, whatever God gives you, he's going to give you a way out of it. He's not going to give you anything that you can't handle. And while
Right.
sometimes it's like, all right, dude, it's like let's fucking not. Can we not? All right, like this is a lot right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to fucking. Can we just back
Like
off a
the
bit?
strongest soldier like quote that's like God gives its toughest battles to like its strongest soldiers, and you're like, I just really would love to be a weak soldier right now. Please
I would
stop
just,
using me.
I just really don't want to be showing off my strength right now. Like I want to rest a little bit. Give me some like mellow times. That'd be awesome. Appreciate it. Um,
Well, that also comes too with like over spiritualizing a lot of things. I've noticed that a lot within the church of like, well, God did this and God did that. I'm like, sometimes people just suck. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it isn't like a huge overpowering, situation. Sometimes it's just a shitty situation, and you have to accept that because then once you over spiritualize it and like have that spiritual preoccupation, it can make the healing process almost harder because spiritualism, God, energy, everything it's a really complicated, hard to understand concept, right? And so if you're already having a hard time understanding something like COVID or something like your parents are passing or, my assault, and then you like add God into that when you're not healed past the trauma first, it can sometimes make that trauma harder to process. You know what I mean?
yeah, and then like for any like atheists who are listening to this, like sorry if this conversation is boring to you, but where you're like, dude, just shut the fuck up already.
It could be
And
very interesting to them though.
that's true. But I'm also just like I it yeah, I think that if you over spiritualize those types of things, it can also push you further away from God.
Yeah.
or that concept of religion. Like why the fuck would I want to believe in somebody who did this to me?
Right.
If he's so kind and got and loving and all this shit, how come all this bad shit in the world has happened? And that's like a whole other like theology thing that
Yeah.
that people go down that road and like I get it. Oh my God, do I get it?
Same.
And I definitely struggle with it myself. For me, the only thing I know, one of the things that honestly that had kept me in faith, in believing in God, is I refuse to believe that the last time I saw my parents was the last time I saw my parents.
Mm.
That's it. I'm like, there's no way I'm not gonna see them again and not give them a hug again.
Yeah.
There's no way that that's not happening. I'm just so the only thing I can do where I try I let people I live and let live. If you believe in God, cool. If you want to talk about it, all right, I guess. But I'm always a little hesitant about doing it because like there's like certain aspects with the church and stuff like that that I don't like, and like I hate how they treat people sometimes, and it's like you're being a dick. Like stop being a fucking
Yeah.
dick. Um, but if you don't believe in God, cool, I'm gonna love you the same, or I'm gonna treat you the same. Like the only thing that it's in my control is how I treat others,
Control the
and
controllables.
yeah, and try to like, if someone says something like shitty or like, especially if it's like something that's like homophobic or racist or
Mm.
misogynist, be like, is that really necessary to say that right now? Like,
Right.
what was the
Right.
point of what was the point of saying that? Like, and trying to like speak up, not being like overt about it, just be like, is that necessary? Like, yeah, we don't have to do that. I remember there was like one time this dude came into the gym and he was watching me like deadlift, and then he was just wanting to ask me questions so I can help him. I'm like, yeah, dude, I got it. And then he said something but like homophobic. He's like, nah, man, that's gay or whatever. And I don't remember the full context of it, but I was like, hey, dude, you don't need to say that. Like,
Mhm.
why is that gay? Or like,
Yeah.
why, like, or you know what I mean? It's like, what was the point of saying that? Like, you don't need to say any shit like that. Like,
Right.
I'm like, dude,
A
like, all
lot of
go ahead.
I was about to say a lot of my clients are part of the LGBTQIA community, and a lot of them have experienced trauma within the church with that. And it's always very interesting to me to see the church's answer for homosexuality of like, well, they're like, we'll just be celibate, but then there's absolutely no support for the single people of the community, even the heterosexual patrons of the church. You know what I mean? And so, and then them being told like, oh, you're going to go to hell, you're going to rot, and you're going to rot 6 feet under, the horrendous things that have been. I mean, there's a TikTok video going around right now of a pastor saying that people of the community should be lined up against a wall and shot in the head. You know what I mean? Like that happened like this year. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
it's insane to have these clients come in and be like already struggling with depression, already be struggling with anxiety, hear this, and then try to figure out their faith through this, and it's a whole thing.
yeah, it's definitely a whole thing, and it's like that again. This is like one of the issues that I have with Christianity is that you have like people who are hardcore Bible thumpers, and like, look,
Hmm.
I get it. The word is like you're taught that this is the word, this is how we're supposed to do it. But I mean, if you have to look at it, the Bible is a historical document. It was literally one of the only, you know, it's one of the main tools for history for people to know about what happened in the time and all that stuff, but there are so many factors that come into play that we also have to be aware of, and like the Catholic Church essentially like chose what books go into the Bible, right?
Right. The
and,
cultural relevancy,
yeah,
translations.
translations is a big one. But like and then there's two sides of it. There's two sides of just they put what they wanted to put in. One, they were getting persecuted. So
Mhm.
what are we willing to die for?
Mhm.
Also, it could also be seen as, well, I don't like that. Nope, nope, that's not wrong. That's not how we're going to do things, blah, 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 blah. Because there were like many books that were written about in the time. And then, especially if you look at like the New Testament specifically, a lot of it was written 30 years after it happened. I barely remember what I did last week.
I was gonna
You
say
know what I
I'm
mean?
almost 30 and I don't remember that far back.
I don't remember when I was born. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
there's like a lot of things, and like I think, again, when we go, you're also just going like with translations or like
right,
meaning, and this is where like, you know, theologists come into play, and like they're trying to break down like
right.
this, that, and the other, you know what I mean? And I get like this is like a completely like total random, like, this is like a whole other level of conversation that
Yeah.
I will 1,000,000% say I don't know enough about it. So with that, I'm gonna
And
I'm
there's
gonna
still
shut my
and
mouth
there's
on that.
and there's still more information coming out. I'm just now reading a book. It's called Misreading Scripture Through Western Eyes. And they take the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and they read it within different cultures. And they noticed that different people picked out different sins within the different cultures of what country they came from, right? So the Western place, it's like homosexuality, it's sodomy, you know what I mean? But then when they reread the story and like a culture, like I don't remember what it was, but like India, it was the fact that they didn't welcome in the angel. It was hospitality was the big sin, not homosexuality. So it's like, how can that same story be read in like 6 different countries and there's different sins that are more or less important? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's also like, yeah, then you have to go into the interpretations,
Right,
and what person who's teaching you the Bible, or
right,
if you're reading it, how you interpret it versus
right.
how others again,
Well,
it's
and
a whole other thing.
I don't classify myself as a Christian counselor, because I'll have clients come in, who may be Buddhist or, it's just religion as a whole. How do we understand that in the concept of mental illness and trauma? You know what
Yeah,
I
you literally read my mind, because I was literally gonna go, was it just Christianity, or do you
mean?
like doing like religion as a whole? Yeah, and then like, I think like there's like I think people who aren't religious, there's like a huge freedom in that,
Yeah,
too. Like I totally respect it, just because we're like, well, we're not worried about we're upsetting some god or whatever. And it's
yeah,
like, I get it. I know for me in my faith, it's always kind of given me some kind of hope. And I think hope is like a very valuable thing, um, that things are gonna pay off. And like,
it's
yeah, you can.
interesting. It's interesting that you should say that because I was struggling with questioning. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I was struggling with because I kind of went through my whole like deconstruction phase, whatever you want to call it. And I was struggling with why more people weren't comfortable with questioning. And I asked my friend's dad, I said, why don't people ask these questions? Like, why am I only the person who's asking this question? And he was like, well, Jenna, he goes, people find comfort in religion. And for you to poke holes in someone else's comfort is one of the most unkind things you can do. He goes, people find peace in religion. And that was like the first time that I had really even understood that concept of like people find peace and comfort and understanding in the world with religion, whether that's Christianity, whether that's Buddhism, there is comfort in believing in a higher power because there's so many things that we can't understand. What happens after death? What
Mm,
happens? Why do bad things happen to good people? And so it's a lot easier to be like, oh, well, this is how my religion explains this away. And I don't have to understand this because this is bigger than what my cognitive brain can understand. Right.
yeah.
And so if you start poking holes in someone else's religion and their beliefs, you're removing their comfort and their peace. And so as long as they're not hurting anyone else with their religion, with their thought process, leave them be. Like let them have be kind to them. Like that's
Thousand
the
percent,
kind
yeah.
that's the kinder option to be like, you know what, I don't really understand it. I don't necessarily believe that. That's not necessarily what I believe, but that is how you found understanding and peace and comfort in the world. And I don't want to remove that from you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
100%. And I think most religions, like the main common goal with all of them is to treat others with kindness.
Yeah.
And then I think where like, you get into like holy wars and all that bullshit is like people trying to impose their religion onto other people. And that's gone from like eons, like,
Yeah.
Spanish Inquisition to what's going on in the Middle East to World War II essentially is what that
Yeah.
was like.
Well, even going down to like being, I remember when I first went through my deconstruction period, I had a friend who was also going through it. And I turned to them and I was like, man, don't you miss being manipulated? And like we both like started laughing. We're like, we do. Like there was something with just being like going into church and just like experiencing the Holy Spirit. Meanwhile, like Joe is just turning down the air conditioner and Susan is changing the key in the song so that you experience this emotional, you know, worship service. But now that that veil's lifted, you can't unsee it. You can't unhear it, And so
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
yeah. And she was like, yeah, I do too. She's like, I miss going in and just having this like blind innocence that I don't understand, but I don't need to understand, you know?
Yeah, that was kind of it's gonna be like a weird transition. That's kind of like how my experience was working for Disneyland. Now, don't get me wrong. No, but it's you know I'm and this is not to knock on them. It was the best job I ever had. Was I underpaid? Yeah, but I still made some of the most fantabulous memories I ever did. But like when you work, it's like when you work for the mouse, you can still love going to the parks, but your mindset is completely different. You kind of know
Yeah.
how the sausage is made. You kind of understand, especially if you work in like attractions or any kind of thing where you're doing guest control. Like if I could do it all over again, I would try to do something that didn't involve attractions or guest control or whatever, like work in like stores or merchandising, because that's what you'll be dealing with versus like you know, this ride
You made
operates
the magic.
this way, and this way. Yeah, the
Yeah.
the the ride operates this way and this way and this way. Oh, that's bad. That's bad show. Oh, that's bad. And like, they have show and everything and all those things. But it's like, oh, that's bad show. That's bad theming. Um, that's gonna break. Or like when the ride shuts down, procedures of having to like restart it up, or like understanding guest flow through the park. So especially like in the positions that I worked in, it was I was a lead for with the show called Phantasmic, which means like I was in charge of like 20, 30 to like 20 cast members in my section. And then also I had to keep an eye out on the traffic flow of guests moving through the park. So if an emerge and that was and when we're doing this, it was like during the peak of holiday season. So you're like having like maybe like 20,000 people go through your area while 5,000 people are watching the show, and you're trying to keep an eye on going like, okay, let's keep these walkways flowing. So if an emergency were to happen, a nurse or a medic or security or whatever can get where they need to go. And then, every time I went to a theme park after that, or an amusement park after that, I would you just look at everything through the eyes of that, not necessarily, oh, the magic of this place. And you could still, now, don't get me wrong, if I last time I went to Disneyland, I can still enjoy the magic of it. I can still enjoy the rides. I can still enjoy the ambiance and all those. You can still enjoy it, but you just see it from a different light. Or especially when you're like working at Disneyland, you're like, oh, I know, like everyone always wonders, oh, what's behind that wall? I know what's behind that wall. It's really not that pretty. Like you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. I'm telling you right now, it's not that cool.
Yeah.
Everything out here, a million times cooler. Disneyland's your escape. And I guess that's how people can look into religion and going to church.
Yeah.
This is my escape for a long week. I want to hear a positive message. I need to be uplifted from whatever I just
Yeah.
went through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people do find, I mean, there's a reason why AA has been around so long. And one of the steps is finding a higher power. Like there is something to be said about the healing process of the church. I mean, I think that the church can be extremely healing and beneficial. I think it has the potential to do a lot of good, but it also has the potential to do a lot of harm. you know? And so you have to be cognizant and aware of both of those, and as well as being equipped with mental illness and understanding, okay, well, what can actually do like potentially permanent damage? You know what I mean? Like it's, I think a lot of it you see with people that are against medication, where it's like sometimes, buddy, like, man, your anxiety, your depression, your body just doesn't produce those chemicals. There's nothing wrong with taking medication, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, or sometimes you really need like a therapist to sit down who understands like the complicated, bullshit that is relationships, and it's a whole kerfuffle.
Um, to switch things up a little bit, because you told me that your undergrad was in film,
Yes.
and then you and then you went to go get your master's in for psychology.
It's human services and counseling with a focus in child development. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so one, I'm fascinated by this because I thought of going down that path for like many years ago. Now I don't want to do it because I just don't want to go back to school.
Fair.
Um, but and I don't want to go into more debt than I already am. Um, what made you go from film to that? Like, what made you want to make that switch? And was it like immediate, or was it like, did you take a
No.
few years before you did that?
Um, okay. So essentially, I majored in film, loved it. I absolutely loved film. I specialized in art department and audio, and wardrobe as well. I did really well. Like as soon as I graduated, I was on working on feature sets, and I felt so fulfilled within that environment. I loved the ability to just come together for a common goal. I lived out of my car for about a year and a half to 2 years and just traveled and did film full time. Like I lived in a different state every month. Like it was something I'm still extremely passionate about to this day. Um, and I was in a car accident on one of the sets I was working on, and the other person passed away.
Mhm.
And that it was kind of towards the end of a lot of my trauma. I have CPSD, so that's complex post traumatic stress disorder. And I also have post concussion syndrome as well. And through like a series of a lot of events, I wanted to do something with my life that was for other people. And I
Mm.
realized that film for me was as great and as passionate, as fulfilling as it made me, it was for me. And once you're in that scenario where, I'm living for two people now, I wanted to do something more with my life. Like there's more pressure to help other people heal, as well as I had an incredible, amazing counselor in Virginia who helped me through everything. And I was like, I want to do her job. Like,
Got it. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, she helped me through that process and understanding and just providing a safe space for me to question, why did God let me go there? Why did God, it all comes back to religion, because I was like, I was the perfect kid, and I was like, why is this big sin, on me? Because how many times have you been in church where you've been like, well, I like cuss and like I've slept around, but I don't do anything, like I've never killed anyone, and then they're sitting in the same room as me, and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like that's my, scenario. And so I went back to school, got my master's, and then I really just fell in love with it. And I want to help teach. I eventually want to be a professor and be a psychologist. So that's why I'm doing the PhD route.
Gotcha. I just want to throw this thought out at you, and I'm sure you already have thought of this, but I that's a good wordplay right there. Pat myself on the back. When you say that when you were doing film, you were doing it for yourself, but isn't there there is a way that you can look at it. You may have been doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it for others, because you're creating something that brings joy to others, brings entertainment to others. And you may not be on the face of that, but we all know, especially in film, hell, even in theater, which is what I did for a long time, and I tried to get into film, but it's always the crew and it's always the people behind the scenes that are really the ones who are creating the magic that brings the entertainment to people. Like actors play a very an extremely important role, and so do writers and directors and everything like that. But it's like it's usually the people that you don't see is what really brings that image to life. And now she's like, screw it, I'm done. I'm gonna go back to film.
So it's interesting that you should say that, because I actually do want film to still be a part of my future. I think right now it's just taken a back burner, as I'm going through all my education and licensure to be a therapist. I think though it's going to be more intentional about the stories I tell, because a lot of the stories that I was telling at that point in my life, it was really just whatever job I could get, and I was just having fun. Like I worked on like a Marvel set at one point, and I wouldn't necessarily say that was like super life changing for me at least, but it was definitely life changing for other people.
Yeah.
But I think later on in my life, after I've had some years under my belt like as a therapist, I'd like to actually help people tell their own stories and actually use script writing as a form of narrative therapy to tell their own story,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
using that creative medium to help people express what they went through, as well as help build connection. Like there's a huge community in art, and being able to say like, hey, I went through this experience, and then another person being like, oh my God, I went through that experience too. And then there's this immediate bond. And then through community, you find healing, you know? So right now it's taken a back burner, but eventually, I mean, like, I would love to like write a TV show about like my experience on the psych ward, and like have like a couple movies about some of the trauma I've been through. But for right now, I really just have to buckle down with my licensure. So
Yeah, that's you know, you're exactly right. Like, sometimes just sharing your own stories in whatever kind of form or way that you can, you never
yeah,
know the kind of people that you're impacting. I mean, that's kind of like how my TikTok has been. I just
yeah,
express thinking, and it's always like you think that, that's the shitty thing about depression, and I've said this quote before, but it's so true, is like the depression is like the most populated club, but it's the club that you feel most alone in because it's
mm-hmm.
always like you think that you're the only one going through this, and like that, and then the phrase "you're not alone" can get like really overblown and overused, but it's literally that, and it takes like a special kind of strength to be able to share your story and share your experiences with others. I mean, I know for me, like the reason why I got into performing was because I wanted to bring joy and help people and like bring joy to
Mm-hmm.
people. And um and even though that part of me is a little bit still there, I mean creating content is a form of performing and entertaining.
Absolutely.
Um it's my goal in life was always just to help people and make them feel better and in any kind of way that I can. And that's why I was always like pretty okay with customer service jobs type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like, yeah, you deal with a lot of assholes, but like I've also noticed even like now, like I do DoorDash, right? That's like hardcore customer service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I deal with a lot of people in customers like at restaurants and stuff like that. And me being even though they're treating me like I'm the customer, I treat them like they're a customer as well. So
Mm-hmm.
and I always say genuinely to them, and I treat them with genuine kindness. Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for the wait. Because I've seen other dashers literally just walk in, barge in, shove their phone in their face and be like, I'm here for this order. And then like and I'm like, the fuck, you can just chill for a couple seconds or like a minute or whatever until they acknowledge you and you're like, oh yeah, hey, I'm here for this. I'm here for this person's order. Oh, I'm so sorry it's not ready yet. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you had to wait. I'm like, I don't know, like shit happens. Like I get it. Like why like
I got
and then
feedback. I'm good.
yeah, I give them kindness back, or and like like
Yeah.
I've literally gotten people. I've literally said two phrases to people that literally catch people so off guard. I say, I appreciate you and have a wonderful day.
Mm.
And the amount of times I've had people go, oh like, what the, like, you just see it hit them and they see that catch them so off guard. And I'm like, I really just want to stop and be like, I am so sorry that you get treated like shit like that.
Yeah.
That simple, those two simple phrases just throw you off. And that's why, like, I'm always just like, dude, just be kind to fucking people. Don't be a dick. This world is hard enough. It's hard enough. People deal with,
It's so hard.
and it's always like, you know, I had a discussion with an older man in the sauna, and he was really trying to stir up shit. And his first thing was like, well, what do you think about the student loan relief? And I was like, and we got in a conversation about that, and he was really trying to debate it hard and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I was trying to show him compassion, and I'm really good about when I get into debates of listening to the other person's side and hearing them and try to play like devil's advocate a little bit.
Right.
And like, well, try looking at it this way. Well, you don't know what this person's going through. You don't know what that person's going through. You don't know what I've been through. I don't know what you've been through. And I was like trying to like change his perspective, not into I'm right, you're wrong, going, you need to start thinking about other people's experiences, what somebody else might be going through, because, you know, I know for me, and one of the things that like really clicked this in this for me was like after my dad died, and even after my mom, years later when my mom died, both two extremely tragic things that happened in my life, no one fucking knew. I'm out in the world, no one has any idea, and it just mind boggled me. I'm like, my world just shattered and exploded on me. Everything is falling apart, and none of you have any. And I was just looking at all these strangers, like, you have no idea, you have no idea, you have no idea. And then that made me go, I also have no idea what they're going through. I have no idea what they're dealing with. You know, go to someone's house. Wow, you're rich. I don't know what kind of day you've had though. Maybe you've dealt with like a certain certain like shit like that. And I always go like, I always just find it fascinating like how other people kind of live, because I'm like, they're something happened in their life that put them in this position. And I always just try to show like empathy towards that. Like I had to do a drop off today at someone's house, and it's beat up like that. And like literally like first thought I was like, oh, this looks like a crack house or some shit like that. It was a little old lady who came to the door, and I was like, okay, you're falling on hard times. You are clearly struggling to with the upkeep and maintaining of the house. I get it. My house looks like shit too. I get it. Like, and because I'm working all the damn time, and I don't have time to do it, nor do I have the money to pay someone else to help me out with it. And it was just kind of like, I get it. And again, it was no like, I was not judging it or anything like that. I was just, my thought went to curiosity. There's a Walt Whitman quote that I learned from the show Ted Lasso. Like, it's like, be curious, not judgmental. You know, it's better to ask questions about people and just try to figure out like, oh, I want like get a better understanding of where they've come from, and what they've been through, versus like, I bet you did this, 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 and this. You like, I've had people look at me and be like, I thought you were a douchebag the first time I saw you. And then I got to know you, and then I realized you're not a douchebag at all. And I'm like, I get it. I could definitely see sometimes, especially in the gym. I'm sure at some points, like, even though I'm a bigger dude, but I'm sure like I've looked like a douchebag at certain points in times, especially with the weight that I lift and all that stuff. Like, you know, when you're dropping hundreds and hundreds of pounds on the floor, not because you're trying to peacock and show off, but you know, that's gravity, that fickle bitch. It's just kind of like, it can look like, wow, that dude's an asshole. But if you talk to me for 10 seconds, or like I'll come up to you and be like, hey, I'm noticing you're doing this exercise a certain way. If you mind, I can give you a couple of like little pointers. You can tell me to fuck off if you want. That's cool too. I just know that this could lead to injury. I don't want to see you get injured. You work hard. I want to see you keep coming here and not coming here. And, you know, but again, it was always like that first perception is, you look like this, so you must be this.
Right.
And it's like, and it's hard to break that cycle. I mean, I know I definitely catch myself going like, oh, okay. But then I have to go, wait, I don't know this person. Like, I don't know them at all. I don't know what's led them to this life. And, it could be like you see a gangbanger walking down the street and that's what they are. And they do crime, but it's always like my headspace goes to, I wonder what got them there.
Mhm.
Because like we all essentially are born as kids. We're all babies at one point with the infinite possibilities of anything happening in our lives. And then a lot of it stems from how we were raised, and then other circumstances come into play. And some people get advantages when they're born. Some people don't have those advantages. Some people have advantages and then they lose it all. Then they're trying to figure it out. It's, that's why I always just go like, hey, just don't be a dick. Be kind. That's why I always say if I ever ran for president, literally my campaign slogan would just be don't be a dick.
I'll see how far you get on that one.
I'll get elected. Landslide. Landslide. I'm
Oh,
sure from like, let's play this out. We'll play this out. If I was really serious about running for office and I used my campaign slogan was don't be a dick, I'm sure a lot of very strong conservative people would put their nose up to that. But I'm sure I'd get a lot of young people going like, that's funny. I like that.
yeah, you
And
say
I'd
that.
also get a lot of people who be like, yeah.
How much of oh shoot, what was it? The fuck Joe Biden thing?
Oh, let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I mean, like that, whatever.
That I
I,
was
I,
in fear.
I don't talk
That
about politics openly.
I
will
I
often,
know.
but
I'll say this. Believe you can vote for whoever you want to vote for. You can be a Trump supporter. I don't give a fuck. The thing that I hated about the Let's Go Brandon. This is the thing I don't like about Let's Go Brandon. And it's like we all know what it means. Just say it. When Trump was president, the Democrats were all saying fuck Trump. Like they were just open about it. And then I've literally seen flags that said fuck Joe Biden. And I just kind of went, respect, because you're saying it. like like own it, own your shit. I feel like I got in this debate with somebody because we're afraid they're going to get persecuted. Like the people who were saying the other shit not going to get persecuted either, like they're not going to get in trouble either. Just own it. Like if that's what you really want to strongly believe in, all right, cool. Like
so
uh
basically, this podcast episode is all the topics you shouldn't cover on a first date: politics, religion. What is the other
yeah, yeah. Technically mental health, because like I don't know if that's like a first, we're talking about like traumas and stuff like that.
one?
Granted, this is probably why I'm single, because like I'm literally one of those like people where I'm like, okay, hey, I'm letting you know up front, I've been through some shit. Don't worry, I've been to therapy.
Okay, so
But I want to know like what's your attachment style? What's your love language? Like what's
I think
that?
that has something to do with the older that we get, the more open we get about our past traumas. But this is what I wanted to say as you were going into that point of wondering what everyone else has been through. I think as a society, we struggle with being authentic and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time where you're like, I wonder what they've been through, I also wonder how much different and kinder this world would be if we were open about what we were struggling with.
Oh, 1,000%.
Allowing yourself to be seen, allowing yourself to be like, hey, I'm struggling with getting out of bed this morning. Like that's been a huge, as a therapist and as someone who kind of has to hold space for people. And then I myself am going through stuff, you know what I mean? And have to be like, all right, we got this. I have a very good poker face, and this was actually something that one of my exes told me. They said, I'm terrified of you having a bad day because I would never know it. They're like, you're always so positive, so upbeat, but you would never know if you're really struggling. And I struggled with being authentic and vulnerable, but there's such beauty in that, and there's such healing in having like a small community that you can reach out to and be like, dude, like my PTSD is the worst, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
like I'm having trouble sleeping, and then allowing those people to see you as you are, your podcast, and coming around and supporting you. Like that has been the biggest growth of my past year of just being like authentically vulnerable with where I'm at within the moment,
Oh, 100%. I mean, especially like, you and I grew up with everything's a facade, and even today,
Oh, yeah.
everything is still a facade. Social media is a facade, and I think that's why a lot of people got drawn. And I had the following. I have the following that I have is just because I'm willing to show me struggling. And but for me, it was just like I did it out of desperation, not of anything else. I was like, I don't know where else to put this, or I'll just put this on the internet,
Can I
and I don't
also
care
say
if you see it.
that is admirable about what you do? You don't see a lot of men do that.
Yeah, that's another. Well, I mean, if you think about it, and this, and I understand it, and this is why like the Here I Am podcast is very like me just going, just be your authentic self. Like, let's go. Like, it's okay. We can talk about mental health. Men are allowed to be vulnerable, but and whenever I do have a man on, one of the common questions that I get was, how often were you told to just man up and deal with it? It's, you can go back in religion, like, oh, just pray on it to God or whatever. But like as a man, you're told, man of the household, dude, you're supposed to not talk about it. I watched that shit kill my father.
Yeah.
The shit that I learned that my father was, stuff that my father went through, that my mom told me after the fact, I got angry at him. I was like, fuck, dude, I wish you would have told me. I wish you would have said something, because then I would have felt more empathetic. I would have seen him in a whole other light. I wouldn't have seen him as this. I love my father. He gave me everything, and I adored him dearly, and his death wrecked me because I loved and cared about him so much. But he was an asshole a lot, and he was so very like stuck in his ways, and now I'm like therapizing him. Yeah, me going through my own therapy and trying to rationalize how he acted and how he treated, and trying to heal like a lot of the shit that he put on me. Me like questioning my own self, and being able to accept myself, and you know I just and a lot of the stuff that he did, I was just like, I had to rationalize it, and like I get it, and like now I'm like, I get it, and like it was like a whole other level of like forgiveness for me for him. And a lot of it, and that it really led to me having to forgive myself, because like the last words I ever said to my father before he died was, I'm disappointed in you. And the weird thing was about when I said that to him was he didn't fight back. He didn't push back on it. It hit him. It affected him. And then because it was like he knew he did fuck up. And he knew why my mom and I were very frustrated with him. And then he went to go to the pharmacy and died in the parking lot like shortly after. And so I think, and so for a long time I went, oh my God, I can't believe that was the last thing I ever said to him. Holy fuck, I can't believe that's, and like that ate at me for years. And it took me a long time to come to that realization was, he knew I came from a place of love when I said that. He knew I didn't hate him or anything like that. And like, again, like my father and I joked with, there was one time my dad and I got into like the hugest fight. We were both yelling at each other, top of our lungs. I eventually just walked away, went into my room, slammed the door, caught my breath, and just went, how the fuck did we get to this escalation? And I started laughing because I was like, he literally pissed me off in 0.5 seconds flat. Like he just said one thing and I was set off. And he's the only person who's ever been able to do that. And I came back into the living room with a smile on my face. And this is like literally like 2 minutes later. I walked back in. I was like, Dad, I got to give you credit. And he's like, for what? And I was like, you are literally the only person who can piss me off like that in 0.5 seconds. And he started cracking up. He's like, thank you. But it was just kind of like a way to like break the ice. And, and that's how and not only did I develop like a sense of humor just because I was the fat, ugly kid in high school and I had to use it as a defense mechanism, but it was just like a way for me to break the ice and break tension. And even now, whenever I'm talking with somebody who is, expressing say like traumas to me, or they're talking about like a rough moment that they're having, I totally listen there. I listen, I make sure they're heard, I make sure they're seen, I make sure they know that their feelings are valid. But you bet your ass I'm going to crack a joke just to make them smile. I'm going to say something stupid off the cuff just to make them, and it's like I've learned to figure out that moment when to do it, when to make them crack up. Because I know for me, it was always like, I know what that feeling feels like. That feeling fucking sucks. I can't let you be that way. Like, even though like they should, but like, I can't let you suffer like that. I'm gonna make you laugh. Let me put a
Mm,
smile on your face for like just 10 seconds here.
okay, so the therapist in me, right?
Dun, dun,
There
dun.
might be some like avoidant of like not being comfortable with just like sitting in the shit with someone.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
No, I'm totally comfortable with sitting in the shit with people. I
Okay.
really am. Um, and it's but it's kind of like a people pleaser in me, or like the caregiver in me that wants to just take care of them. And even
Mhm.
though I know that like it is important to acknowledge and just feel your feelings and just like kind of ride that shit out, if they're with me, I want to do anything in my power to help them feel better. And I know for me, it was always it's like just like a little joke, just like a little one-off sense of humor type of thing to make them laugh. Like, especially like, you know, in the dating world, saying like in the dating world, if I'm with somebody who's been through some shit, I'm gonna do anything in my power to like. This is what I get frustrated with, and with dating as a man who is very understanding of traumas. It's a lot of women have been manipulated, a lot of women have been lied to, a lot of women have been taken advantage of. And it's hard for me because I struggle with wanting to prove that I understand and that like they can trust, or like I'm understanding of it, like I get it. But I'm very like I have a very anxious attachment style. And so it's been taking me a really long time to understand people with an avoidant attachment style, that they need to back off. Because I'm very like, no, like I get it, like I understand, you can trust me, like we get it. But it's also in the back of my head, yeah, that's what that other person said too.
I think this was one of our very first conversations, like off of TikTok.
Oh, it's 1,000% is.
It's like our
That's how
different.
most of these a lot of my conversations with people that I've had through TikTok, it's literally my first sit down, real conversation outside of like texting 5 minutes here and there. But it's just kind of like, okay, I learned something about your story, or I learned something about you beforehand. Cool, let's delve into it. But like the beautiful thing about like this podcast is it's a safe space for us to just be ourselves and have these kind of discussions and have these kinds of talks, and just kind of let it like just be raw, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's attachment styles are interesting. You know, they're tough. I'm very avoidant, like very like extremely avoidant. And there's this like therapy that you can go through. It's called like intimacy anorexia, for people who have been abused, and basically they starve their partner from intimacy because they have an addiction to safety, and
Mm,
they've been told that like they're not safe in intimate relationships, and so they like get connected with someone and then they like crave that safety, that isolation, and then they end up, you know, hurting their partner. And so I went through I didn't finish it, but I went through some of that therapy, and that was helpful with just understanding that like, hey, like someone can be mad at you and you can still be safe, you know, like
yeah.
someone can be like upset at you or have a different viewpoint, and you're not going to get hit, you know, which was my situation of like I was abused to the umph tenth, you know, of the umph
Yeah.
degree, you know, where it was like if any time my partner was upset or mad at me, it was like, okay, my life was in danger, you know. And
And a lot of people have experienced that, and like I get it. Like there was a person I was talking with, and it's just like she has a very hardcore fight or flight, like
mhm,
hardcore. And she told me about like her dating experience with like her previous like real serious relationship. And this dude went off on her because she forgot to put fucking towels in the dryer.
Yep.
And I just went, holy shit. Like, yeah. And so like whenever that's why like, you know, we've talked off and on for almost a year, and it's very sporadic. And she's like, you're always so kind to me about it. And I'm just like, part of me is like, you know, this I should never entertain this anymore
Yeah.
because it's not fair to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting what I need. But at the same time, I'm also like, she's experienced a certain traumas in her life that I've also experienced that I don't know. I've never met anybody else who has had that same exact thing. So that's why I'm just kind of holding on to that hope, because I'm like, you fucking get it. But at the same time, I'm also like, you know, when she's telling me like she flew or whatever, I'm like, I get it. I understand. It's really, really, really difficult for you to trust. And part of me is kind of going like, if I keep showing that I'm consistently here, it's twofold. My brain goes all over the place with these things. I see things from all different angles. It's if I keep showing you that I'm here, maybe you'll get it and you can develop that trust. But it's also like, I don't want to be that person where, you know, when you need moments of vindication, or you can all of a sudden turn to me out of the blue. You know what I mean? There's a fine balance of being there for someone because you genuinely care and you want to do that, versus they are using you for that. And so I tried to come to a place in my life, in my mind, of the only thing I can control is how I treat other people, and I can treat them with kindness. If they take advantage of that, that's on them. That's not on me. That says more about them as a person than it does about me, who's just trying to be kind. And I know a lot of people who have struggled, especially in dating, of just putting themselves out there like that. And they feel like they're doing so much for this other person and they're not getting anything back. And like, yeah, it's very easy to just go, no, like, fuck that. You deserve good things too. But it, you know, this is me trying to work my way to like a secure attachment style of me being understanding of both an anxious um and I just forgot the other one. An avoidant attachment style. Um and knowing that, like, I on my last episode of the podcast with Jordan, she said this beautiful thing of like, it's not about what you bring to the table, it's you are the table, and who's willing to, and you're just having to willing to be there for them. And so like, I know what I bring to the quote unquote table, but it's like, I know who I am. I know what kind of partner I am. I know how flexible I am. I know how understanding I am. I know how like willing to communicate I am, and how open of communicating I am it with. And it's just hard to find like another person who's like willing to match that energy. And I get it, because not a lot of people are used to having that. You know what I mean? Like, how rare is it to have like you said, it's really weird to see a guy open up and express about his emotions. Now imagine me being able to do that, and I'm like, I'm willing to be open and vulnerable, and I'm willing to do all that. I'm willing to do all the lovey-dovey stuff, and then like I can also like flip it and do other stuff, if you know what I mean, in the bedroom. I have like different sides to me.
Yeah.
But I'm literally just going like, look, here I am, this is me, you're gonna accept it or not. And like, I'm always willing to grow and all that stuff, and like I'm always evolving and always changing as a person. And like, you know, with traumas, you know, you're always kind of be healing from them. When someone says like, oh, you're not fully healed, it's like, no, trauma is always kind of like stick with you. And you know,
Yeah.
I have, you know, my parents are dead, and that was like one of the biggest trauma. It was the biggest trauma in my life, on top of the other traumas that I've been through. But Like it's more about like I have tools to handle those situations when they arise. And I always struggle with like someone going like, well, you need to be finished healing first before you, and it's like, no, you're always going to be working on it. This shit sticks with you. You just got to learn how to cope and handle it and treat yourself with kindness when those situations arise.
Yeah. I think so. There's a lot there. So,
Yeah, I tend to do that. So the therapy that I go to, it's a free therapy resource called Change Your Algorithm, right? And it's essentially it's a therapist who teaches a class, giving you tools to help you with your situations, and they do encourage sharing and talking and asking questions and stuff like that. And so like even like today, I shared something with the class, and she just sits there and she's like, "Okay, there's a lot there." It's like I'm gonna say,
it's not bad. It's just like, okay,
no, it's not bad.
like
No, it's not
making
bad. But
pinpoints
like,
kind of like, okay, this is what I want to touch on. So it's so yeah, okay. As an avoidant female who's been through trauma, having a male enter into a relationship who is very emotionally aware can be triggering. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and the last guy that I officially dated was like, if I could give him like, if I could be like a personality reference for him for his future relationships, I would, because he was an incredible guy, was very emotionally aware, was very like sensitive, was willing to like work on things with me. I just wasn't capable of doing that with him. Like I was not at that position in my life I wasn't healed enough. You know, I didn't have enough time in my schedule to really make that relationship a priority, and he did. And his earnest love for me scared me. I'm going to be honest. Like it's that sort of like cherishing that sort of attention was very triggering for me because it meant manipulation in my past relationships.
oh yeah,
You know what I
1,000%.
mean? And so it was
Yeah.
all like, oh my God, like he's like talking about his feelings and like that means that I need to change everything, you know. And it was really tough. And I try to stay friends with the majority of my exes as long as it's not harmful, you know what I mean, for either party. But it's difficult with attachment styles to, like, when you start dating and there's trauma, to understand that you're not the savior, you know what I mean? And they have to be just as willing to work on themselves as you are. And for me, I know I wasn't. I know that I wasn't in that space to work on a relationship with him. And really, I mean, even you touched on this of like healing is never done. You know, like you'll never be healed. Like you're always going to be in a healing journey. You know what I mean? Like you'll heal through one thing and you'll process it. And then like 6 years later, something will remind you of it. And you'll be like, oh my God, I thought I was done with that. And now I'm still sad. You know, like
That literally came up today with the therapist. She's like, I'm a 51-year-old therapist. I've been through lots and lots of therapy. I do therapy. I preach there. Like she's like, I teach it. And she's like, but I still get stuff that comes up and like, I worked on this. Like, why is this coming back up? And it's like,
well,
it happens.
when I went to therapy for the car accident, I remember talking to my counselor and being like, man, like I like can't even get out of bed, you know, and it's been a year, you know. And I was like, I felt like it would be easier at this point, or at least like I don't go a day without thinking about him, you know. I don't get in my car without thinking about him. And she's like, Jenna, it's like a spiral, right? Where it's like it doesn't get easier, but like when it first happens, it's going to be like the intensity, the duration, the frequency of your depression and anxiety is going to be really intense, you know. And then you're going to get away from it, you know, and you're going to slowly get away from the accident and the pain, but it's still going to hurt. She goes, there's going to be a time 20 years down the road where you'll be driving and something triggers it and you'll have a full-blown panic attack just because of the amount of pain that you experienced, you know. And there's a picture going around the internet, I don't know if you've seen it, where it's like grief doesn't get smaller, you get like larger, like you grow around grief, but that doesn't mean that if you shake the jar it's still going to hurt, you know what I mean, just as bad.
Yeah.
And so it's just going through that tying it back into relationships of we're still going to be traumatized. You know what I mean? You're just having to choose someone to be traumatized with, essentially. You know, like,
Yeah. Well, I see it as like it's being part of like the support system for the other person and having that understanding. And I think anybody who has gone through traumas, they just, I know for me, it's just I just want to be supported, and I just want to know that like it's okay. And um like the person I was talking with, I was breaking down like I get it. Like you have this avoidant, like this strong avoidant attachment style. And I was like, something happens, you get too close and you bail. And she's like, isn't that toxic? And I went, no, that's human. It's human. Like toxic to me, if it was toxic, to me it'd be like you're doing this on purpose. Like you're manipulating someone to get close to you, and then you shove them off and tell them to fuck off.
okay,
And I think it's
there's a spectrum, right? Of there's unhealthy, there's toxic, and then there's abusive. And I think that too quickly, especially with TikTok, and I have a bone to pick with therapy TikTok if we ever get to that point, of where it's you can be unhealthy and you can even be toxic without intentionally being toxic.
I can see that. I think yeah.
Abuse really
Um
happens when you're intentionally abusive. You know what I mean?
yeah, and that was the main point I was trying to hammer home. I was like, you're not trying to do this on purpose,
Right.
versus like, there could be like a person out there that you're trying to get interested in, and they know it, and
Mm-hmm.
they go, and then they just, they draw you in, they pull you in, they get close, and they want everything but the relationship. They want the physical needs or whatever, and then they'll push you away. And if they know about attachment styles, they can just be like, oh no, it's because I'm an avoidant attachment style. I'm scared. But it's like, no, you're fucking doing this on purpose. That's like, yeah, that's like abusive. And I think that's what a lot of people have dealt with. And I think for people who like the quote unquote good guys or whatever um who struggle with that, it's like, man, like it's because it's it's hard to have that understanding that the person just can't be with you because they have the last time they were that they allowed themselves to be that vulnerable, it crushed them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why there's like there is a toxicity to when people are like, no, bottle your shit up, don't be vulnerable, don't feel those feelings. And it's like, no, you have no idea how much stronger it is to allow yourself to feel those feelings and to be vulnerable. And like it's such like a superhero quality to be able to be that vulnerable with somebody. And I think like the real where people can get into I'm gonna say like a danger zone, but I mean this in you're a badass dangerous, like you're gonna be like, I can be vulnerable, and if you fuck that up, that's on you, that's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I'm not going to allow that to change me and who I am. And like I think that's like a very like next level, like I think that is part of like a higher level of like being healed, quote unquote, is like, yeah, this is me, this is what I've experienced, this is what I'm feeling right now. Oh, I don't like that. Well, fuck you. Well, you know what? I'll fuck you because you can't handle that. That's on you, that's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to find like a partner who is who is understanding of that. And a lot of the times it's not necessarily that other person's fault. Sometimes people just haven't experienced things, and so
Mm-hmm.
they don't have an understanding. Like, you know um one of my friends, they wanted to unalive themselves, and their mom freaked out because their mom um had family members unalive themselves, but her husband has never dealt with depression like that. He
Mm-hmm.
never understood it. He never got it. So what did he do? He tried learning about it, which is fucking huge. I thought that was beautiful. I thought when they told me that, I was like, that's fucking gorgeous. Like, really? He's like, I don't get it, but if this is what we're going to battle, I'm going to learn everything that I possibly can and try to understand it. And I think for people who just don't understand certain traumas, I think the best thing that anyone can do is just try to learn and just listen and try to put and like, you know, when my parents died, the thing that pissed me off sometimes was when people say, I know what you're going through. And it's like, you're minimizing my trauma right there. You're minimizing my experience. Whenever someone tells me that they had a parent die and they know, and I've had people come to me because they know my situation. And I'd be like, I can understand how difficult of a situation this has to be. I have no idea what you're going through. I have no idea what you're feeling, but I know it's hard. The only thing I know is that it's hard. And I'll try to listen and try to understand from your experience and share mine. And hopefully that brings comfort knowing that you're not the only one. But um, yeah, it's trying to just have someone willing to understand and listen and be there and and again, like me, it's just being supportive when I'm struggling in those moments. Sometimes I just would just love it if someone was here to sit with me, or someone was here to just give me a hug or like a back scratch or whatever. You know what I mean? And as a man, me saying that out loud, you know, I don't have a lot of men who listen to this podcast, but if I did, I could already see the comments of like, bro, you need to fucking man up or get a dog or fucking like bottle that shit up, bro. Like you're a pussy or whatever. And that's another term I hate. If we're gonna go, if you want to go down that road, I hate the term when
No,
people go like,
okay.
oh, you're a pussy.
Let's so in like when I went through IA therapy, we talked about the difference between independent, codependent, and interdependence, right? And so there's a difference between like someone with an avoidant attachment style is like dead set on being independent, right? They don't need anyone. I don't need no man. You know what I mean? Like they don't need anything. And that's not the goal. The goal is not to be independent completely. The other goal is not to be codependent, right? The need for someone else is going to be really dangerous. What happens is the goal is interdependence, right? Which is I am fine no matter what happens, but I'm choosing to depend on you.
1000%.
And it's like I will be okay. You know what I mean? Like I struggle with depression. I've struggled with depression my entire life, you know? And it's like I'm gonna be okay. I have my coping skills. I will be fine. And in my avoidant attachment style, communicating to my partner when I'm like, hey, I need some space. I'm gonna go away for a little bit because this is what I need, but I'm gonna come right back. You know what I mean? And even giving them one of the tools that I use now is I give them a time frame, right? I'm going to go away for a day and I'll be back on Sunday. Can we talk then? You know, and reconnect and have like a reconnection ritual, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like let's go on a date or whatever. But and then I think where the anxious attachment style kind of their default is the codependency, like needing another person, you know, needing that validation. And so it's finding that I'm okay no matter what happens within myself, but I'm choosing to depend on you because I know that you got me, that I can trust you, that you got my back. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, 1000%. And that is where I am in my life right now, where like when it comes to dating, I don't need a relationship. I don't need to be in one. It is what it is. Like it's like I'm completely fine and happy on my own. I'm content with where I'm at. Would I like to have someone with me and do life with them? 1000%. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
would, but I don't need it. And I think, and yeah, that's like not my, and I think that's, you know, where I've changed completely. Like I always felt like being in a relationship was always like I needed to be in one so it would societally look good. And like I remember whenever I was in a relationship, it would always be me people pleasing to the nth degree and changing myself to because I thought this is what they would like me to be. You know what I mean? Versus just me being myself. Now I'm in a place of like, do I need to be in a relationship? No. Would I like to be? Yeah, I'm totally open to it. If it's right, if we kind of fit together, if we're both being like our authentic selves, if we're willing to communicate, like, you know, if someone was telling like, you know, in your situation, use your example, like, hey, I need to back off for like a little bit. but I am going to come back. You know, like that's something that like you can communicate with someone with an anxious attachment style.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now. I need to back off. For me, this is nothing that you did wrong or anything like that. I'll
Yeah.
come back, but I am going to come back on, and giving a time frame is like next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, like A1 steak sauce right there. Like it's it's
It
it's
also,
very like,
yeah, someone with an avoidant attachment style, we can get a little gluttonous for independence. And so it keeps us in line of being like, if you set a time limit, you have all the time, you have 24 hours to get your, junk in check and like experience your emotions and do whatever you need to do. But to keep pushing them away is unkind, and you don't want to hurt your partner with your need for independence, and so it's setting that time, and then honestly setting that like reunification ritual, of like, hey, like we're going to go on a date on Sunday and I'm going to plan this out as the avoidant attachment partner. We're going to rejoin on Sunday. This is exactly what we're going to do. And I'm going to love on you in this way, which, hopefully is like your love language and your needs. If you're going to give me grace and space, I'm going to give you this at this point in time. And then it kind of helps get back into that secure attachment style.
oh, 1,000%. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's literally just kind of like playing into each other's needs and being, again, going back to being understanding of one another.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that's absolutely beautiful. Jenna, we've been this is our third attempt of attempting the recording this episode, and we've had many difficult technical difficulties, especially with thunder and lightning, and she's dealing with like a thunderstorm that's really messing with all of her electronics.
Different computer.
But yeah, different computer. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, you're gonna be like, the quality changed. It's like, oh, she switched computers because weather, and circumstances. But um, the way I like to end these podcasts, I like asking one final question. And I'm a big proponent of counting our victories for the day. So, Jenna, what is your victory for the day? What is a victory for you for the day? And it could be something small or huge. It doesn't matter.
Hmm. I had a really good morning. I woke up, I journaled, I read, I went on a walk with my dog. It was I meditated, stretched. It was really good. So I
That's
had a good,
awesome.
yeah. Today's my off day, so that's very
Ditto.
yeah.
Yeah. My victory for the day. I did adulting things, but honestly, I'm still riding a high from what I did yesterday. And what I did yesterday was I had a 700-pound deadlift.
You sent me
And
that video.
yeah, yeah. And that was just like a culmination of a lot of things. And it was like months and months and months of trying and failing and
Mhm.
trying and failing. And so that was just like a really huge thing for me. And it brought a finality to the way I've been lifting, because I've been going like, I wanted to start doing something different. But I'm
Mhm.
so close to this number that I'm like, let's just hit this number and
Mhm.
then do something different. And then so like if anybody, if you see the video on TikTok, which right now it's doing surprisingly well. It's shocking me how, because it's a minute 21 seconds long. And I was like, the fact that some people are sitting through that minute 21 to see the end of me lifting it is astonishing to me. But you can hear me yell, I'm done. Like done. Like I fucking finally did it.
It's
And
definitely like a gladiator moment.
oh, very much so. That's why I yelled so loudly. But it was just kind of like one of those like and to anyone who always goes like, oh, you shouldn't yell in the gym. And I was like, well, lift that kind of weight. If you don't express any kind of joy in that, then I don't know
Yeah.
where you're at. But yeah, it just brought like this like new like, all right, cool, we're gonna start a new chapter. And that doesn't mean like I'm still gonna lift like heavy. But I'm not gonna be shooting for like I already hit 700, time to hit 800. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, my body's already hating me enough. Like for me to lift what I lift and my body to be in as good of a shape as it is in now, I could just tell how beat up and tired it's getting. And I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, let's try doing something else and just see how my body reacts. And so like that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. And then another victory is honestly like having this conversation with you. This is like really our first conversation that we were able to have.
Yeah.
And you brought back, this little, it's been a minute since I've been able to like actually like really like record and you remind me just like why I do this and why I've sharing our stories and our experiences, and hopefully it helps other people. So it was definitely a pleasure, and I thank you for coming on and giving me your time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I
Oh,
appreciate it. It was great.
oh, of course. Well, we'll definitely have to do it again. And thank you to everyone who is listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you can just subscribe, leave a comment, share this. If you're just listening to this, if you can just share this with anybody and all your friends that you know, and just kind of help spread the word about the podcast, that would be absolutely amazing. And I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead of you. Please remember to be kind to yourselves
Mhm.
and be good.